Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome to Nightlight, everybody. So glad you could join us. It's going to be a good show tonight. I'm very excited about my guest. He's written a book called Time Shifts, Experiences of Slipping into the Past and Future, and his name is von Brascher. Every now and then, somebody reports stepping out of normal time and space. It doesn't seem to matter where they live or their background. The veil of ordinary reality drops, and they suddenly slip into the past or future, usually seamlessly and unknowingly experiencing a temporary and accidental form of time travel. Sharing detailed accounts from people who have experienced time slips and shifts between realities, including his own experiences, Von examines what their stories have in common to establish the pattern behind how these sudden slips in time occur. He examines criticisms of the scientific support for this phenomenon, debunking claims that time slips are delusions, implanted memories, or remembrances of past lives, and showing that they may be related to energy vortexes, tears in the fabric of our reality, black holes, astral travel, or light body movements. Studying reliable models from both the West and East, he compares these excursions with shamanic journeying and the practices of yoga masters and mystics who use trance-like meditative states to travel outside normal space and time. Exploring the work of Einstein and other physicists, the author also examines the different speed with which time passes in ordinary reality and during time shifts. People find that only a few minutes have eclipsed for a time shift experience that appeared to take hours. Von is an award-winning journalist and former faculty member at Omega Institute, has led workshops throughout the United States and the United Kingdom. A lifetime member of the Theosophical Society, he is the author of several books, including 7 Secrets of Time Travel. Welcome to the show, Von. I'm so glad you could join me and enlighten me on a lot of this.
Hi, Barbara. It's good to be with you. I have my nightlight on. I'm ready for it. Say, this is a great opportunity to talk about time. And it's always been a fascinating subject to me because I noticed that we lived in kind of a boxed-in world here, you know, a surface world, a shadow world of illusion, if you will, where nothing seems to change very quickly. We have this, I call it this boxed-in feeling all around us, you know. It's like, I think in my first book, 7 Secrets, I described being caught in a spider web, but having the great sense of mobility and fluidity that we can go up and down and side to side and we can bounce forward and backward. But those are the 3 dimensions we have. It's nothing more. We can't really move, you know, and everything moves so slowly. Everything seems to take forever here to change. You know, it's like being stuck on an iceberg floating in the ocean and you can't see on the other side of the iceberg to see how big it is or who's there. You can't see how tall it is or how far down into the water the iceberg goes. You can't see around the iceberg. You're just sitting cold, afraid to move, and that's the way we are. We're just like being bumped around by our environment, and it's like, I think it's sad. People have this boxed in feeling. So I'm not the first one to notice this, of course, but one of our theosophists, who was also a Gurdjieff colleague, was P.D. Uspensky, and he wrote many marvelous books, and one of them was Tertium Organon, and it was supposed to be a book to explain many, many things, Tertium Organon, and he wrote In Search of the Miraculous and so many wonderful books. Well, now he says, it's like we're living in a room on the second floor, and we have no idea what's below us, no idea what's above us. There's no windows to see outside the room. We can't really, from the muffled sounds, detect what is above us or what's below us. It's like Plato's allegory of the cave, centuries earlier said the same thing. We have such a limited view of things. Well, but, like Plato, Uspensky didn't think this was hopeless. He said if you raise your consciousness and go within, to what Carl Jung would call the great unconscious, and for anyone who hasn't read the Red Book, give it a try. Jung explored the depth of this deeper consciousness and all that it held, and all the answers are there inside you, but you've got to go deep inside you. And Uspensky said you have to get outside yourself. You are the barrier. You are a physical being with physical limitations. We're limited by the three dimensions. We're limited by the laws of physics that govern our physical bodies. We can't move forward and backward in time, but we can. Our consciousness can. And there are people that have done it accidentally, and these are called time slips. And they're very unnerving for people. I mean, I've had them, and they're very startling, and you think, oh my gosh, this can't be. I'm hallucinating. It's a delusion. It's a daydream. This never, ever happened. And you talk to somebody else, and they had a similar experience. But a lot of people don't want to talk about it because they think you're a little crazy. Well, crazy like a fox. You actually opened up your consciousness for just a moment, and you took one big step beyond, and that's all it takes, And there are groups of people that have learned to do this. In the East, we have the Samadhi mystics. They teach your young how to do this. We have the example of shamans in indigenous cultures. We see it, prevalent in North American Indian tribes. The shaman would go into a deep trance, and he would seem to go beyond time and space. He would go back in time to listen to the ancestors, not to interact, but just to observe, because you're not there physically. You can't really interact in the same way. You go forward in time to see what the future holds for the people. And this is very important to each one of us on an individual level, because every one of us, I think, is really on a hero's journey of discovery and insight, just as much as Dorothy on the following the Yellow Brick Road, just as much as Odysseus, sailing hopefully toward Ithaca and his wife, always going forward, always hoping to advance against overwhelming challenges and obstacles, and this hero's journey of discovery is filled with many treasures, and what the treasures are what you learn along the way.
Well, I think many people have had the experience of an out-of-body experience. I think, when I've worked with large groups, I've asked people to raise their hands if they've ever experienced an out-of-body experience, and, no hands have gone up, and people have looked at me strangely. And then I'll say, have you ever been in bed and felt like you were falling and suddenly jerked yourself awake? And, lots of hands went up. And I said, that was an out-of-body experience. You were being jerked back into your physicality. So you had an out-of-body experience. And it's
so true.
And
so
when
people
you
have
talk
them
about...
and they don't realize it when it happens to them, because it's so out of the ordinary. We have no way of describing that culturally. It's odd. You can't really measure it. It's because it's nothing about this is structural or physical or can be measured in a scientific manner. This is the journey of spirit, is what it is. And I mean, as soon as I wrote this book, I knew that in researching this book, Time Shifts, that there were indeed many people that would awaken in the morning, and they would have these sense that they'd been somewhere else in their dreams. So I wrote a book on mysterious messages from beyond, and in the beginning, mysterious messages, which just came out. I think I talk about people who will be walking in the woods and they hear their name called, and they'll be in their bed in the morning and they feel like they've been somewhere, and they're very disoriented. I remember my son. He used to wake up in the morning when he was little, and he would say, he'd be talking, and who were you talking to? He said, I was talking to the dead. And he was quite serious, because he was speaking. He wasn't quite awake, but he was answering, the question. I was talking to the dead. And I think we've all had these sort of dreams, And this is, also a great area of travel, if you will, of time travel, is where we travel in lucid dreams. Dreams that take us outside the physical body, in our conscious body, and their spirit roams without the barriers of time and space, going anywhere, seeing anything, alternate realities, other timelines, anything.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be, let me take a vacation. There's always, when you do something like this, there's always a purpose to it. It's not just, I'm going to Disneyland. It's, I went here, and it's important, I believe, for people to journal down these experiences so that they can look at them and try to surmise what message we were trying to give to ourselves to help our reality.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you can tell when it's a lucid dream. People say, well, it was very crystal clear, and it was in color, and it seemed to, answer questions that I had floating around. And it's like, I don't know if it was a lucid dream. Well, here's the thing. If it's not in your memory banks, you didn't program it in your brain. It's not in your frame of reference. You're not rehashing unresolved questions that you could not resolve during your so-called waking hours. And a lot of our dreams, of course, are they're restless nights when the brain isn't quite asleep, and we're rolling over these thoughts in our minds, these unresolved questions, concerns about what comes next. And we can't resolve these questions even when we're wide awake. So whatever makes us think we could do it when we're half asleep. Well, it's just that, it's the restless mind is what it is. But we're talking beyond mind. And to my Buddhist friends, I must say, yes, I'm saying it's beyond the mind. It is your consciousness. It is that self, that inner self, that true higher self that dwells within you, which many of us call spirit or consciousness. If you want soul, although I think we're all one soul, but I think we each have a spirit, and that spirit within you is the part of you that's hidden in reserve, always waiting to be awakened. It's time to awaken. It's time to go within and meet this person and to let it roam and discover and learn. This is the greatest challenge of our lives.
The spirit is that part of us that travels throughout eternity, so that caught in a physical avatar, if you will. I think sometimes that spirit gets bored with the mundane stuff, and there is a quest to expand and to learn and to grow, and the only time it appears that this part of ourselves is able to stretch is when our ego is asleep and we're at rest and not controlling and holding on to, and at that point in time we're able to transcend the physical and move into the ethers and either astral travel or what I find fascinating is, of course, going back in time is something that is probably more acceptable to a lot of people than going forward in time because the future has yet to be programmed. So to speak.
We're a little worried to look into the future. I think it's kind of like almost an inner taboo for a lot of us. We don't want to know the future. We want to know the future, and yet we don't want to know the future, and we have no frame of reference for the future. Whereas in the past we have some idea that we were there, or certainly our kind was there, and we in fact were there. But back to this idea of the inner self, the self that dwells within our spirit. It is an eternal aspect of us, and long after your shelf life as a person is over. Let's face it, we're like a box of cereal. We'll have a shelf life. Just like that old, Chevy in the garage, it has a shelf life, and so do our physical bodies. But our spirit goes on, and it has always gone on. And if we're looking for a spiritual advisor, a guide, a teacher, look within. All the answers are within us. It is our inner spirit. Our inner spirit has seen everything before us, and it knows exactly why you're here, and it knows what you should be doing and where you should be going. It also knows the future.
Well, and I think, to borrow a term from Star Trek, I think the internal journey is the final frontier.
It is. I know a lot of people like to say, are we living in the Matrix? And in fact, we all are. We're all living, if you want to call it, a maze. We're all going through, some kind of a tunnel, looking for a way out. We're all boxed in, and we're looking for the way home. And I'll leave it to your listeners to discover what is home. Is it Ithaca? Is it returning to Kansas? It could be different things to different ones. But I think all of us want to return to source, return to light, return to the one soul, and then we're going to come right back here again and do it again.
Well, I would agree to a point. I do believe that, and this is part of stuff that I've been working on lately, that our spirit is on a journey, and that journey is through the cosmos, and it will go beyond what humanity is, and it's gathering information, it's growing, it's expanding, and personally, I believe that at some point in time, our spirit will get to the point in time that it is so evolved that it will break through into another dimension and become a source consciousness for that dimension. I see no point in going home and taking what we've learned because home already knows it all. I think we need to go forward in order to be a creator ourselves.
Yeah, well, the idea of the arc of the hero's journey historically and psychologically has been that you would return home a transformed, more enlightened person, and you would a changed person, and you would bring insight with you when you come, and so it's the idea of the hero's altruism or sense of well-being for the whole of community, and in that sense, I think that we are all part of the one light. We are all part of one consciousness. This is something I feel very strongly about, and when we leave, we will evolve, and I think that this is what consciousness wants of us here, right now, where we are, right, sitting here on this beautiful ball of dirt that we call the Earth. It's to grow and learn and evolve and experience and bring something more back to the whole, back to the one source, back to source. So I think when I say go home, I always think it's back to source, the one source of all, which is the one light, if you will.
Yeah.
We're all really basically just light.
Oh, absolutely, and that's basically, where we come from, and we have a piece of that source inside of all of us, a seed, if you will. So as as people in boxes now, I think everyone does experience to some degree some of this slipping into the past and slipping into the future and having deja vu.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a good idea to pay attention to those slips, because they're giving you a message as to the purpose of this particular adventure, so to speak.
Yeah, they're meaningful. As Jung would say, this is significant. Significance, synchronicity. That you keep having these same slippages all the time. Why do you keep slipping back there? Why do these things keep happening to you? Well, pay attention, because the cosmos, in its great wise way of bringing things in front of you repeatedly in a sense of karmic identity, is trying to get your attention, and it's we need to be more observant. We need to see with new eyes, hear with new ears, as prescribed time and again in the Old and New Testament. See with new eyes and hear with new ears. If we could only do that, because what we see here in the surface world is simply the surface, it's shadows. We're looking at reflections of light off of objects. We're never really seeing anything. And we talk about this as the world of illusion. Well, when does it become solid? I mean, everything is in a state of perpetually becoming something new. We need to get we need to get into this mindset or this rhythm that everything is in a state of dynamic change, and we need to adapt to that, not hold on to everything being just so, because it's never going to be like that.
Yeah. No, that's very true, and humanity as a whole lately has gone through a major shift, and times will never be, the good old times are gone, and so we have the opportunity to create new good old times.
Exactly.
And I think most people are sitting back anticipating or wondering, and I don't believe that they're aware that they are responsible for the changes that are coming.
Exactly.
That it is,
we're all creating this change. Even those who sit on the sideline and seemingly do nothing are contributing to the change. Even as an observer, we're affecting the scene, and even if we do nothing, well, even things that decompose, add to the picture, add to the structure. You cannot not be involved. We're all involved. And we're involved with just our thoughts and the kind of thought forms we project out. It's really not important to think about doing things. It's important to think about thinking things and creating things with the energy within us.
Yeah, I think, and that's unfortunately our society, being as high tech as it is, in many ways has taken away the element of creativity from us. And being creative and utilizing your creative energy to help to manifest a better world is something we all can do. And it starts with each person as an individual. It's sort of like it takes a lot of rainbows, a lot of raindrops to make, a stream that becomes a river, that becomes an ocean, that becomes a tsunami. So, it's important for everybody to do their part. And every little ripple you put in the pond affects everyone else in the pond. Absolutely.
The ripple effect for each one of us is significant. And you don't know really how influential it'll be, but, even everything that we think and do is a part of this. There could be no people living in caves, renunciant, and not taking part in this world. I refuse to accept that. Everybody should get involved.
Well, I believe everybody will. I think everybody does, actually.
Those who live in the cave will be affected as well. There's nobody isolated. We are all interrelated and interdependent, and we need to wrap our heads around that.
So what would you suggest to people that really want to start to take control of things? How do they begin? Because we really do have control. We truly do.
We absolutely do. Yeah, absolutely.
And
do.
I think there have been times when I've said, well, I don't think I want to repeat that one again, but I drew it to me, so there must be a reason.
It is fundamentally important to release your inner spirit, or the self that dwells within you. Your consciousness. You have to start thinking consciously, and not just depending on this little pocket calculator we call our human brains, because that's a little. We all use them, right? It's how I kind of add up, my bank statement at the end of the month. On good months when I can do it, but this is a flawed mechanism. It is influenced by the information we program in it, including the misinformation and disinformation we program into it. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of deep, bad programming that goes into our minds culturally, and we don't observe and process information correctly. My first half of my life was as a journalist, and I used to just be astounded by what we don't see. We're just not that observant. You could have 10 people witness an accident. You'd have 10 different stories. And if you interview them on one day and then the next day, you probably get 20 different stories. We just don't. We're not that observant. But your consciousness, your inner self, your inner spirit, this inner, let's call it intelligent energy that dwells within you. This intelligent energy that dwells within you is so keenly aware. It has powers of awareness that are so far beyond our 5 physical senses of perception. And that's the way we need to start seeing the world and seeing ourselves and seeing our place in the world and our place in the greater scheme of things in the cosmos, in all of creation, and thinking about where we've been and where we are and where we should be going and where we should be headed in the future. It is, and thinking about others. We live in such a me-first era. It's just frightening. Very few people are concerned with their neighbors. I finally moved out to a little island. Why? Because these people are all very different people. But all these people on these islands, on this little island, are basically concerned about we're all in this together. It's like pioneer mentality. We all look out for each other. So if you're gone, you don't worry about a thing. They water things for you. They're going to water things for you and take care of your pets and pick up your mail. And you don't even have to ask them. They'll stop you if you're walking on the road, do you want to ride? You know, but we've lost this connectedness with each other. You know, and this is really scary because we are all interrelated. We are all interdependent. We are all on this road together, this road of spiritual evolution and discovery, and we are all part of the one light.
Well, if you go way, way back, and I mean way, way back, there was a group consciousness almost that people were able to communicate, you know, as a whole, as a group consciousness, and it was really quite phenomenal. But independence came in, and all sorts of things came in over thousands and thousands of years, and we lost that connectiveness. And I think we're trying. A lot of people are trying to get back to that now, and it is an unusual. You know, there is a group consciousness. There is. Everybody has experienced from time to time that, you know, the phone rings and you know who it is, or the doorbell rings and you know who it is.
Yeah.
We have all of these. In lots of ways, our bodies are avatars for the spirit, and our bodies are like they're like a DeLorean. And the only thing is, we weren't given the owner's manual, so that all of the bells and whistles are still inside, but we have access to them. And in dream state especially, we are able to connect with them. We can utilize them. And so for people to get more in touch with themselves so that they can trigger some of these wonderful time shifts that are so cool. I mean, tell about the poor family that was driving along and they took a detour and the detour took them. That's a great story.
This is actually a common story. I was telling this story in Australia, and I got these two women in Australia saying they had a similar story. Well, here's essentially is the story. This couple, they're driving along the road, the highway, and they're it's a nice day, and they think, oh, let's take a little side trip, and they pull off into this little town on the highway, and they go into this town, and the clock is like stuck at a certain time, and there's a woman pushing a baby carriage, and she doesn't seem to be moving. She seems to be stopped, and there's, I'm trying to think what else there was. There were
diner
building, the diner, And anyway, so it was really weird, and they think, like, this doesn't seem right. But they got back on the highway, and they said, well, let's try the next town. It might be more interesting. The same dang thing, the clock, the diner, the woman pushing the baby carriage, and it happened twice. And so I was telling this story in Australia, and these two women said, oh, my gosh, you were telling our story. I said, well, I think this has happened to a few people, you hear this story again and again as like an urban legend. I think there was even a Twilight Zone on this. This is like, this happens to people. And people will take, what happens is you'll just slip in and out of time. I think we have to think of there being alternate timelines. There's really just one timeline. It's like a big conveyor. And you take one step, and then you're at a different point on the time conveyor. But what keeps us all kind of here in the here and now is we're fixated by our sense of perception. We're fixated on this spot in the timeline. This here and now. But if you allow your consciousness to shift, and what always seems to happen in these time shifts, or the time slips, where it's very accidental, is that people will have a shifting consciousness very often upon being interviewed. The people who experience these shifts forward or backwards in time, they'll say, well, I was just very quiet, or we were very quiet, and then suddenly we were somewhere else. And then they seem to have a shifting consciousness. They go within, they get very quiet, and they have a shifting consciousness. And I think it's that shifting consciousness then that allows them to step somewhere else on the timeline, because we really have access to virtually any point on the timeline, place, and any time. You know, it's all there. You know, it's coexisting. But we're just stuck right here, you know, which isn't, you know, a bad place to be, but it's very limiting is what I'm saying. So what I thought over and over again with these stories was the same thing.
When you're talking a timeline, I mean, time is of this dimension. So are you slipping into other dimensions or other versions of...
Well, that's often an explanation. People like to have, say, well, it's a dimensional shift. But I think language gets in the way of this. One of the things that prevents us from moving freely forward or backward in time and in locations is gravity. You know, so once again, it's very dependent on our physicality. You know, the laws of our being physical beings. If your consciousness moves outside of it, then you could literally go anywhere, anytime. And in fact, you could actually take your body with you, you know. I mean, I've experienced this. I've taken a step, and I'm like 20 miles away. And it's like it's a whole different time, it's a whole different place, and I never went back. So I've gone I'm a time traveler. I went 20 miles into the future, you know, and it's like there I am. But I think that the way we look at time as it is being fixed, like, you know, 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, and that sort of thing. It's all dependent on solar time, and it's all dependent on when light strikes us, you know, which is light is omnipresent. You know, it is not a one-time thing. You know, we have such a limited concept of all of this. As light strikes you, that is the now moment. You know, that initiates life and light. But so what we think of as time, and the limitations of time, you almost have to think of time as defined by time limitations, because that's the way people think of it. You know, it's like boxed in. You know, there's only so many minutes in the day. So that is an illusion or a limitation, if you will, of this physical life, this three-dimensional world we're in. So there is something outside of our three-dimensional linear world that we're in, with all its boxed-in physical, you know, laws of physics that keep us here on this, you know, place, you know, in terms of gravity and weighted down in the very spot we now occupy. But if we move outside of our physicality, that is as spirit or as consciousness, conscious energy leaving the body, if we move outside of our body, as Uspensky said, the way to get outside of the boxed-in thing, said Uspensky, is through, he said, meditation. But, you know, he was transcribing it for people that he knew. It is a shift in consciousness. It is opening up your consciousness and moving outside your physical limitations. So, in other words, an out-of-body experience.
What about people? I have heard people talk about folding time, and it's I've heard two sort of versions of it. One is suddenly seeing something that is obviously from the distant past, as though you know it was a jumping back in time, and the other I experienced when I was I created a deck of cards and I painted them. They're all hand-painted mandalas, and I found that I would sit down for 8 or 10 hours of painting, and before I knew it, the time was gone. And obviously, I had done something, but it was putting myself in another level of consciousness in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. You know, I wrote one book. It was called Perfect Timing, and it looked at folding time, and it looked at how we can actually learn to compress time and expand time. And I have exercises in that book. It's an older book, but doggone, it works. It saved my bacon many times. I remember the times when I had to compress 20 hours of work in like an hour, and I did it. You know, because you can compress time and you can expand time. And if people think that's crazy, think about when you were in an accident and time, you move so slowly.
Oh, yes, slow motion.
So slowly, yeah. Okay, you see everything. What that was, let's be honest, is your consciousness got outside of you for a moment. It was released, and it slowed everything down for you. It broke it down, so you had greater conscious awareness of everything going on in minute detail, and you were able to, like, every moment you could hold it, you know, and every second could last as long as you needed it to last. And there are times when we seemingly speed up time because we choose to have time go quickly, you know, like when you're having fun, right? So it happens both ways, yeah. But this idea of folding time. Now, there are some cutting-edge physicists that are writing, and I refer to them in my book. They write on the area of the megaverse, the multiple universes, and this is so interesting because they say what is happening is that, in a sense, the dimensions are folded, or the world that we're in. You know, once the words get confused because we have certain built-in meanings which may not be accurate in future exposition. But let's say that this world is just so close to the next world, and this universe is so close to the next universe, and this reality is so close to another reality. We're like layered. We're tightly layered, but light doesn't go around the edges, so it's folded. So these separate realities, right? This sounds like a Castaneda book, separate realities. so separate realities in separate universes and separate worlds are and they're all layered, and they're like a map that's been folded many, many times. But if you open it up, it's one map, but you fold it up, and just on the other side of this tiny little thin piece of paper is a whole different place on the map.
Yeah.
And they say that's what we are, and they say that it could be as thin as a membrane, if you wanted to put it into words. But I think, once again, words are loaded. So, but they say it's a very thin dividing line between this reality or this world and another reality and another world. Now, I think a lot of people, when they wake up in the morning, you know, does this maybe ring a bell for you, Barbara? Is that when you wake up in the morning, sometimes you feel like you were somewhere else, you were someone else, and you were living another world. And I think that a lot of us are living parallel lives and parallel realities.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
I know. I think, I mean, the writing of Jane Roberts always comes back to me, and the Seth Speak material. The idea that once you've created a given energy to something, it begins to take a shape. I mean, I know that from ghost hunting. You know, was that a lot of the dark forms that are developed, you know, and haunt buildings are not really deceased people, but they're like emotional entities that have been created by people's dark thought forms, you know.
Egregores, yeah.
Egregores, yeah. Egregores are a terrible thing to think about because it indicates that we've created our own demons. You know, it's a terrible thing to think about.
Yeah. No, I believe we do that, and sometimes when we pass on, we forget to take everything with us. And
yeah. Pack it all and take it, please. Just take it all.
I'm not packing that one. But I think that there is so much more to our place in the cosmos and our purpose in the cosmos, and so many of us, especially as we get older, it's like we're not croaking quite yet, but we're sort of doing the life review, and what is my impact, what is my purpose, why am I here, and what is it I was here to gather, to learn. And if I knew that, I'd make sure I put off learning that final lesson as long as I could. But it's sort of like there's more to life than just eating and sleeping and doing day to day. There's so much more to it. And when we are at different places in our life, the element of and you go into it, for in quite a number of places with the fact that shamanic journeying and meditation and yoga masters, and I'm not saying that everybody has to start meditating and doing all sorts of heavy duty spiritual work, but the reality is getting in touch to your higher self, with your higher self, through whatever method you want is really important.
You need to learn to do it as quickly as possible. You have to sit and meditate 20 hours a day, and if you learn to uncork your spirit and release your higher power and get in touch with your conscious energy, you should be able to learn that lesson quickly and go back to it every day. It's like learning a bicycle. You shouldn't have to sit there and meditate for hours and hours and hours. I mean, I've studied yoga for years. I mean, I'm a student of Raja Yoga. But honestly, people spend so much time doing this that it becomes a ritual, and I don't like ritual. You should learn to quickly shift into a consciousness, a higher consciousness.
I call it a click in. If I'm going to be doing, it's my click in. I go to a place inside of me, and I click in, and I'm there. And the ego has gone out to lunch or out to the movies or whatever.
Exactly. Well, people like you, Barbara, that are psychic, this seems to come easy to you compared to other people. But everybody should learn this at some point. And then when you learn it, you shouldn't have to keep relearning it every day. You should be able to go to it. You should be able to quickly click in. Exactly. You should be able to tap into a higher consciousness at any time, doing the dishes, walking, anything. This is extremely important that people learn to do this. And it is extremely important that people learn to program and do dream work of a significant nature, because you can learn in your dreams.
Oh, yeah. I think that the dream work is for me fascinating because, especially with recurring dreams. I mean, I have fantasy dreams, which hold no purpose at all. But then there are other dreams that you have to have. I mean, it's a form of recreation. I mean, I've even gotten up in the morning, at the end of a dream and laid there and thought, no, I think I'm going back in and changing the ending. And I've gone back in and changed the end of my dream.
Yeah, I've done that. Isn't it fun? It's like when you have the same recurring dream, and it's so troublesome. And I said, I've been having this dream like every other night for decades now. I'm changing the outcome, and I did over a period of time. I changed it, and I had a certain amount of feedback because it was possible to do that. On some level of reality, you have that control. And it's a matter of touching that point where you do have the control. I mean, all the power is within us.
Well, yeah, that's true, and we do create our reality by our perception of it. And you know, and so
that's
it's
the first thing. My teacher always said the first thing is to perceive it. If you can't perceive it, you can't believe it, and if you don't believe it, you can't achieve it. But you know, I think he put it this way, and I don't think he invented these terms. But he said that it had to be in a certain order. But first of all, you have to perceive it. You have to see that it's possible. And I think this is seeing with new eyes. You know, having the vision to see what could be there. You know, that seeing how things could be different, how things could be better, how things could fit together. Because in the end, it is all going to fit together. It's not spatially the way we think it is. You know, we're not going to be able to measure everything, you know, with a yardstick in the end or weigh everything and have it all come out right. I know the scientists would love that. This is not really the world we inhabit, you know. And it's like, well, no, but in the end, we are going to see a pattern to it. You know, there's going to be a pattern to life that's going to make sense to us, and we need to start opening new eyes to see that what it is. You know, because this is so important. This is why we're here, to learn, to grow, to discover, and evolve spiritually. I mean, the universe depends on us. Every one of us has a song, a part of a song, to add to this great symphony of life and evolution. It is spiritual evolution. And consciousness can't evolve without everyone participating.
Well, and at least for this lifetime, this is one of those times where spirit, for some reason, has to be in the physical to gather the experiences that it needs. And you know, there have been moments that I've stopped and I've said to myself, did you really need this, or was this just playtime, or you know? What were you thinking?
And in the end, I don't begrudge a lot of the playtime, but you know, it's like we spend so much time doing silly things and not really, you know, seeing the pattern and getting the message. You know, we confuse, as Marshall McLuhan would say, we confuse the messenger with the message. We always think of the messenger. It's the message, and are we internalizing the message? Is it meaning anything to us? Are we absorbing the meaning? You know, or are we trying to weigh it? It's like, you know, how many ounces is that? You know, how long is it? Well, we're obsessed with like putting clothes on everything, and it's like and measuring it, you know, with a tailor's tape, you know, everything. It is a little more to it than that. That is just very superficial.
And I think what's so fascinating, everybody puts a certain amount of weight on, you know, an education, you know, college or master's degrees or PhDs or whatever. And the reality is that means absolutely nothing except you have a lot of paper. But it's important, though, that we spend the time in getting to know ourselves and getting to master an understanding as to the purpose of a lot of the events in our life and how we can utilize that experience to our greatest benefit. And I think that so often we get caught up in the physicality and the epidermal stuff as opposed to the deep stuff that means so very much.
Oh yeah,
I think
people want to memorize. Yeah, people want to memorize things, you know, or they have this like all these dates in their mind, or how to spell things. I mean, this is so insignificant. I mean, I told my son, I don't care what kind of education you get or what you do with your life. Just think about two things: learn to read, keep reading, and weigh everything, but don't necessarily believe anything. And think for yourself. Think for yourself. We need to think for ourselves. Who's doing your thinking for you? Because your thinking is very important. Our thoughts have power. It's energy. It's intelligent energy that we're projecting out.
Oh, yeah.
Those are our thoughts.
Some of the wisest people I have ever known didn't make it past 9th grade. And and you know, and they've written books and they've done all sorts of things. They've taught classes and you know, it's wisdom, not knowledge, that's important. Knowledge is, you know, book learning. Wisdom is taking it and making it your own and then living it as an example for others. Oh, I should write that down.
I had a teacher. That's good. I had a teacher who would take me out in the woods and try to get me lost. And she finally just said, you know, if you understand how these woods operate and what they're saying and what they're doing, you would understand everything. I said, what? She said, I'm going to give you some tests. And she would, like, point out things. She'd say, tell me the meaning of this. Because there was a meaning to every pattern that happened in the woods. Everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, well, to me it was just a pretty place. And she said, you're just looking at the surface.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't think I can do much with you until you open your eyes. She was right.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I think that's, it's sad. Our education, in my opinion, and I taught school for 25 years, but in my opinion, the educational system is not teaching our kids anything. It's programming them, for sure, but they're not thinking. And that's an important thing.
They fill them with information, then they test them on how they remember that information, and that is supposed to measure what? I'm not sure what. It's all about testing now, right? And it's like, I would like to teach them how to think for themselves. That would be great.
Well, so getting back to folding time and time, because I think so many people are fascinated with how do they get into a place where they can look into the past or look into the future. But the past probably more so than the future, because the past in many ways is provable.
Well,
the future is yet to be, you know.
Yeah, and yet you can go into the future. I mean, I've only gone a couple of times. It's a little jarring because it's going to be really not what you expect, you know. It's going to be really different. Because we have no frame of reference. We have only a frame of reference to the past. But it's like I have exercises, and I've taken them from different groups like, you know, Samadhi mystics. I've taken them from shamans, you know. And I don't believe in guided imagery or any of that kind of thing. I think you have to do this on your own. You have to practice on your own. You have to take these journeys, and a lot of it can be done. A lot of this folding of time can be done in dream work, you know. But to set up a dream where you actually leave the body and go somewhere, I mean, you have to, you know. I've leaned a lot on hypnotic suggestion, self-hypnosis, and I think this kind of takes up where meditation falls down, because, you know, they would set up prompts, which we might in the metaphysical community call magical prompts, but they would set up prompts, triggers. They would call them triggers, and they would set up triggers for, you know, what happens next when this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. And so you basically like program yourself what's going to happen. And so you paint a picture. You have to get very, very still to do this. You could do this in a waking dream, or you can program this to happen as soon as you fall asleep at night during normal sleep hours. But you need to like get very, very still, put the body consciously to sleep, put your brain to sleep. That's very important. And to do that, you need to reach an inner, I call it inner body harmony, where your brain agrees that your consciousness is not going to get you in trouble. You're going to be perfectly safe in your bed, and you don't have to worry about something that's going to come and snatch this man and rip him limb to limb. That's because that's what the brain does. It protects you. So you say, okay, I'm going to give you some time. You can actually rest. You could turn off and you turn off, and it's like it's really important that you really turn off, and then you program like on a slate. I say go inside your mind with your mind's eye inside you. You're drawing a picture of where you want to go, what you want to see, when this is, where this is, the characters, if there are different characters, and what you're going to be doing and what you would like to learn. And you make it as detailed as you want. So it can be very, very specific in your programming your dream. But what you're really doing is programming an out-of-body real experience, if you do this right. Now, then you tuck that back, and then you see nothing but blankness. And then when that happens, then you bring forward the tablet, the picture you've drawn, and when that comes forward, it is like a map that will take you with unerring accuracy toward the time and place you've selected. This is all karmic, you see, because you can magnetically go exactly to where you need to go, and I encourage people to try programming their out of body lucid dreams, because lucid dreaming can be so significant. It can be so revealing. It has such insight. It can answer so many questions that you don't even know you have, and yet you can actually program it to answer specific questions you have, and you can set up the conditions. You can go backward in time and explore things. You can go forward in time and explore things. You could go to different places that are far away and explore things. But always these dreams are revealing and filled with insight and treasures far greater than gold, treasures of knowledge and power that you need to bring back. Because this is what we need in our life journey. We need this insight. This is why we're here. It is not to sit on the sofa and watch reruns with potato chips. It is more.
Absolutely. And, I think the one thing that I have found is that for me, and I can only speak for me on this one, most of the material I get is symbolic, so that, I'm not, nobody walks up to me with a piece of paper and says, here's your answer. There's something symbolic there that I have to work through and work out to be able to get the deep meaning that has been presented.
Good point. And, I used to be accused of visiting people in their sleep, and I would hand them notes, and they couldn't read the notes. Because actually I would just hand them a note, and there wouldn't be anything on the note, because on my part, I was handing them a note. I already know what the note said, so I didn't actually write it. And they'd say, I opened the note, and I couldn't read it. I said, of course you couldn't read it, because I just thought what it was. I handed you a note. But you have to actually put the message there. So, I don't know. My teacher said you have to be very, very, very demonstrative in a lucid dream. You have to actually, jar people into acknowledging things. Because this is how we learn. We're jarred into learning something. And if you have to shake a few bells, shake them up, And a lot of it's going to be symbolic. So I always say when you come back, before you start journaling and trying to interpret your dream, and by the way, no one can interpret your dream like you. I'm sorry, but no one knows what's inside you but you. You're the only one. So I always say just sit there very quietly and just quietly reflect on it before you get up and start moving around and turning on your brain again, because your brain is going to want to analyze things immediately, and it's going to say, this does not compute. This does not compute. This does not. We cannot measure this. This is not within our frame of information. Well, of course not. So you have to sit there and you have to lie there and quietly reflect on it. It's a very quiet sort of meditation. It's an introspective meditation. And you just quietly reflect on what it was. If you want to call it recapitulation, it's recapitulation. You're actually, going over it, and it's like, how does it feel? And it's like you're going to be filtering this not with your brain, but through your consciousness. Your consciousness is going to say, this symbol, how did it feel? And you just sit there and you sit there and look at it. Don't try so hard, It's good, because your inner spirit knows all this stuff. If you just listen, it will help you. Listen.
Oh yeah.
And then you get up and then you put it down, because you're going to want to go back and revisit that dream, right? So you want it down eventually in a journal.
Yeah, those journals can be so fascinating, especially in retrospect, because lots of times you get a message, or you think you've gotten a message, and if you look back on it a year later or even more, you'll notice that there's greater depth to it and greater meaning to it than you thought at the time. So it's a good idea to journal. It's I highly recommend it. Now, a lot of shamanic stuff, a lot of I guess shamanic mostly have dealt with using hallucinogenics, and So while a lot, if you look at the Oracle of Delphi, that was hallucinogenic, and a lot of the early shamans did hallucinogenics, and some of the, especially Peruvian shamans, the ayahuasca stuff is, I tend to veer away from those, and yet early seers and mystics utilized them. So, what is your feeling on that?
Well, I think I kind of agree with you. I have to admit, looking at many examples where the hallucinogenics would actually allow some of these people to break free from this world and cross over to the other world. It would allow them to release their inner spirit, their consciousness. It's unfortunate they couldn't do it without the hallucinogenics. I think that's my take on it, because this is a very artificial way to spiritually awaken to the voice within you.
And it just the thought just occurred to me that if someone was using a hallucinogenic to get to other realms, so to speak, if you used a hallucinogenic and I used the same hallucinogenic, we would go to different places, to different realms. And so would you get what would be appropriate, or would you get a skewed impression?
See, that's where I think it's not really legitimate, because if you're going to go back, and look at it, like let's look at Carlos Castaneda, his first book, Journey to Ixtlan, the Yaqui Way of Knowledge. It was actually his graduate thesis fieldwork with Mexican indigenous shamanic people, and it involved using peyote and a lot of indigenous hallucinogenic herbs, and this was part of his field research. Well, then he first of all he interviews them, and they tell him, we do this, but they said, you don't need to do this. But like a fool, he goes down there and he does this. That is to say, he takes some of these herbs, and so I think this kind of skewers the information, in that he he took drugs, if you will, that could have clouded his judgment, so that he wasn't clear-eyed during the experience. And I always doubt the results of this. And I know that Paul Twitchell did the same thing, and maybe I'm wrong about that, but I know that Timothy Leary did the same thing, and it's like, and I know that different shamanic leaders have done this, and I'm not saying it doesn't produce results, but you shouldn't have to do this, and it becomes a little bit questionable if two people have the same experience, but they have a different way of recognizing it or describing it after having both of them taken hallucinogenic substances. So you think like, well, it just kind of whacked you out. It's like, well, how much of it was just
Well, if it puts you into a different state of consciousness, it would mean that your judgment and your perception was different too. So if you had gotten to that same level clearly with greater clarity, the message you bring back would be altered and different as well.
Exactly. I think when you get this kind of information, you want to be clear-eyed and alert. You don't want to be drugged out. And I encourage people to avoid those things. I just think it's a very weak way to go.
Well, it just while you'll definitely get something weird, it may not have any application to where you are, and depending on what your level of consciousness was when you went into it would skew you even more. So to do this, I guess basically what I'm trying to say is the slow and difficult way is the best way to go, because that gives you greater clarity and perception when you get to where you're going. Yeah.
I think of, I don't know if this fits here, but I always like the story of Sybil Leek, the White Witch. And she wrote a book early on with her training in psychology called Inside the Bellevue. And she got herself admitted inside the Bellevue Hospital, mental hospital. And what she discovered was that the people that were there, they were seemingly hallucinating and seeing things and describing things that were not physically obvious, but their descriptions were alarmingly similar, and that they were seeing a similar thing. Now, these were people who weren't necessarily not necessarily drugged, So I think that what you want is you want two people to see the same thing and have an agreed upon definition of what they're seeing, without the fear that the drugs have surfaced something in them psychologically that they're now reliving or experiencing. I think it's just very unreliable when drugs enter the picture.
Oh, absolutely. I have a very good friend who is probably one of the best psychic mediums I've ever known, and she developed dementia. And she said, my ego is going. And I said, that's fabulous. And she said, why? And I said, because your ego is what gets in your way of being a psychic medium, so you're probably a better psychic medium now than you were 20 years ago when your ego was fully functional.
Yeah.
And yes. I mean, the material that she brought forward was phenomenal. She was connecting directly to spirit, which is where you want to go. Now, she can't make coffee anymore, but she can certainly talk to the other side far better than ever before.
Yeah. See, so we dedicate so much of our waking time in our activities, in our so-called thought processes, with mundane things like making coffee. Now, I love to make coffee because I love to drink coffee, but I'm finding that I drink less and less of it because it just, why do I need to be hopped up on coffee? We need to get out of our own way. We're blocking ourselves by doing all this silliness. We're just filling the day with silliness. I love the poetry of T.S. Eliot. One of them is, and no one quite agrees with me, I guess, on this, but his first great poem was The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And Prufrock spent all his time on just insignificant things, like how he looked in the mirror and how his hair was and whether his hair was long and combed and what people thought of him and how he wore clothes and how he walked down. But he never had any, significance in his life. It's all this silliness, and this is what our lives are, mostly.
Well, yeah, and we get into patterns. And, what is a groove one day is a trap and a trench the next day. And it's sort of like, you change it up, be different. Every now and then, I love to go out to dinner with friends when you could go to the restaurants, and I would order my meal backwards. And
really?
Coolest thing to do in the world. And what happens if you're really good is you manage 2 desserts, and because you have to have dessert with everybody else too. So you start with dessert, and then you go the main course, and then you go your super salad, and then you go to your appetizers, and then you go to dessert again because that's where everybody else is. But it just it's why do you have to eat a meal in one way? You can eat it backwards.
Well, I had a great uncle who would always ask for if you go to somebody's house for dinner, he would ask for his dessert first. He'd say, "What's for dessert?" And he'd say, "Oh," I'd say, "Well, let's say it's apple pie." He'd say, "Oh, my goodness, can I have that now?" I said, "You want it right now?" He said, "Yes." Well, there was reason for that. Once when he was a little boy, the family house caught on fire, and he didn't get his dessert because it happened during supper time. And so I always thought, here's my takeaway from my great uncle's story. Not always I want my apple pie now, which sounds really great actually, but putting things first that are most you don't want to forget. So I always try to do the things that are really, really getting at me, and put them up first, because all this other silly stuff isn't important, Prioritize what's really important.
Yeah.
Because, we're only going to have so many blips of the heart, and then there's going to be an expiration. It's like the clock that wound down, and it's not to be gruesome, but it's going to happen to each and every one of us. And then they're going to, say, well, this person named such and such, left us. Well, yeah, in a sense you did. You'll probably be back, but you'll be a whole different person. But did you do everything that was important in your life? Did you learn anything? Did you actually figure anything out? Did you actually spiritually evolve? Are you farther along your life journey of knowledge and experience and insight than when you came in? Yeah, I'd like to think we're making some progress along the path.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, I had someone say to me, "I'm just so sad about my husband because he's not spiritually oriented and he's not involved in any of this stuff." And I said, "Well, what makes you think that you're more evolved than he is?"
Yeah.
And she looked at me and I said, "Just because he's not doing the same type of study you're doing doesn't mean he hasn't already done it and he's waiting for you to catch up."
Yeah. I used to be very disappointed, too, with people that I didn't think were very spiritually evolved, people that, went out and shot all the Bambis, and people that thought war was great, and, the list goes on and on. Everyone has their hot buttons, but it's like, I would think some people, they were just quick to anger, and they weren't, they didn't ever try to reach harmony with anything and anybody in their life. And I thought, like, why should I be angry at these people? I should be rooting for them to get better. It's like, I should be cheering for these people. These are my neighbors. These are the people that I sincerely hope figure it out at some point, So I have to, encourage them and not always just, give them a scowl every time I see them. that accomplishes nothing.
No. But, the thing is, we're all at the exact right place we're supposed to be in our evolution.
Yeah.
And everybody's journey is different. And, you can't jump on somebody else's train. You have to have your own.
No. Yeah, and it's important for people to think about that, because we always want to fix people. It's like, I'm right now, I'm just trying to fix myself, and I just tell people how I think I'm maybe beginning to get a little bit fixed, and I tell terrible stories about how unfixed I am, and I hope it helps people a little bit, but they got to live their own life and figure it out for themselves. No one's gonna get you there but you. It's an individual journey.
Well, and that's I think what people, especially today, need to hear and need to know, that whatever is happening today in the world is happening because we were a part of creating it, and we're here to add to the resolution of it or the explosion of it, whichever way we're supposed to go. But there's an ongoing tide here, if you will, and we're not stuck. And when people feel stuck, it's because they're afraid to move. And understanding that we're in a flow. We're not stopped. And if you put your feet down and you plant your feet and you don't go any further, I promise you're still moving ahead. You just don't notice it. So taking part in it and making an effort to expand your own consciousness. And there's no perfect score or anything like this. Whatever you do, is fabulous and perfect for you. Whether you're watching ice cubes melt as a meditation, or whether you're sitting chanting Om for 9 hours a day, whatever feels perfect and right for you is exactly where you're supposed to be.
Well,
and if it doesn't feel right,
and to realize that we are a part of this, and that we're a part of co-creation. I think people think that we're just kind of like walking along, or sometimes I think people think they're just like trapped in a board game, and they just keep getting buffered around and battered from side to side, and they're like punching bags, and they're like reacting, the victim mentality that they get tossed around from here to there, by every wind that comes along, and every new tide, and every force of nature, and everybody, and they're poor, pitiful me, like the Linda Ronstadt song, poor, pitiful me. It's like, oh, poor, pitiful you. It's like you are a co-creator of the universe. This world is not fully formed, folks. It is in a state of transition. It's in a state of constant transition. And nothing, just stay outside and watch the grass grow. Nothing tomorrow is going to be the way it was today. It's dynamically changing everywhere around you constantly. And you're either part of it or you're not. And really there's no way to avoid being involved, because you're here. You're in the picture. You know, it's like when I started to walk in on a play that I thought had already started, and the cast was actually walking on stage from the lobby, and I ended up on stage with them. You don't want to be that involved, but you know, it's like, especially when it's Equus and someone said, "You're not in the cast," and I said, "Yeah, I guess that's because I have my clothes on." Yeah, so I sat down. But you know, we are all part of this evolving process. This is a play in production. We are living the play right now, and think of the great Indian goddess Kali, with all her arms reaching out to humanity and love to embrace them. But in the end, Kali will destroy the world to rebuild the world, and we really shouldn't get all upset about this, you know, because change is dynamic and everything is changing.
Well, I think we have to be like Chicken Little in the farmyard. There's a story about how Chicken Little was in the farmyard in the dirt there, and was laying on its back with its feet in the air, and you know, everybody kind of looked at him. Have you heard this?
No.
Okay, so the roosters wandered around and said, you know, "What are you doing?" And Chicken Little said, "Well, I heard that the sky is falling, and I'm going to try to catch it." And the rooster said, "And how much do you think you can do?" And Chicken Little said, "I do what I can do."
Exactly. Just be accountable. Have a sense of responsibility and caring. You know,
cast your vote.
It's important. Yeah. It's important to be caring, you know, and to try. Just the effort of trying is more than what you accomplish physically. It is the transfer of intelligent energy as you project this thought out, this loving. There's nothing stronger in the universe than love. Nothing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and the thing is,
people
too,
say, well,
the journey, a long time ago, I did a barter with an astrologer, and at one point he said to me, you know, you should be doing this work full time. And I said, well, you know, when I retire, I'll see where I am and what I'm doing. If anybody's around, I'll talk to them. And he jumped on me. He said, "You don't understand. It's not arriving anywhere that is the teaching tool. It's your journey that is your teaching tool."
The journey is everything.
And, you know, and it's like kind of like once you arrive at the top of the mountain, the only thing you can do is take a deep breath and turn around and find the next mountain. So Exactly. I think people need to see their life as a journey, and you know, being willing to accept the call to embark on the journey, and having the courage to embark on it and fully embrace the journey, and to recognize that we're on a journey of discovery, and this is what your life is. It's not just supposed to be comfort, you know. We're the only animals that I can see out here that are just trying to like find comfort in life. You know, there's more than life. There's more to it than just being comfortable. Oh, geez, yeah. And sometimes if you're comfortable, then you don't go anywhere. You just sit back in the hammock and drift. And, you know, that may be appropriate for some people, but not for most of us. There's, you know, and you can't do a wrong thing because everything you do is a teaching. You know, you're going to learn from it.
Everything.
And, you know, it's kind of like, don't touch the stove, it'll burn you. Well, oops, yep, it did. Not going to do that again. So, you know, life is so exciting, no matter what stage you're in. And you know, I'm really glad I'm not. You know, I'm beyond potty training, and I'm really glad I'm not in my 20s or 30s anymore. And I have to admit, I hit 50, and life got so much more exciting. And then 60 got better, and 70 is fantastic. And I'm excited about 80 coming in a couple of years because, you know, everything is new and exciting, and there's more stuff to get involved in and get in trouble with, and and create. And
you begin to see how, and you just begin to see how valuable every year is and every day is. And I start every day like, what can happen today? And the old me used to be, is it going to be a fun day or not a fun day? It's going to be a hard day or not a easy day? It's like, is this a layback day or a work hard day? It's like, what are we going to learn today? What's going to happen? Mm-hmm. It's like really exciting.
Well, I think that
can't wait
people.
To watch.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal, and there's always a surprise. And
always.
Maybe keeping a journal of okay, what was the surprise for today, and what did I learn today, or what kind of positive message do I get out of the chaos that I created, and there are times, but I think love is absolutely important in life. But one other thing that I have found personally for me, and it may be for others, if you don't have a sense of humor, it makes everything harder.
Harder?
Harder, yeah. A sense of humor is crucial to make life flow.
Oh, yeah.
No, the sense of humor is, and laughter. Laughter is probably one of the greatest, most powerful tools out there. So that having love in your life is important, and being a loving, caring individual. But on top of that, if you have a sense of humor and you can laugh at almost any situation and find joy in it, then your life is very rich.
Well, you look back at the people you meet in the course of the day, total strangers right on the street. And there are people that are like really clever, and there are people that are impressive, people that are striking, people that are loud, people that seem mousy, people that seem downtrodden, people that seem confident, and all the evaluations we might form of these total strangers. But the one that sticks out at the end is the one who's kind. It is far better just to be kind than to be smart or rich or handsome or anything else. Just being kind.
When I look back at my high school days, and I do it, it's a long way back, I found that the girls that were the pretty girls didn't develop the personalities and the character that those of us who were not pretty developed. And
that was a surprise to go back and see all these people years later, and the pretty ones that had terrible lives because they thought that was their ticket to eternal happiness. And it wasn't, that fades. It's like, it's gone. It's gone. It's like, you're not so pretty anymore. But the inner beauty of people that just glow, that's special.
And try to tell a plain teenager that now, but it's kind of like you're going to develop aspects of your character that are just so far and above other people's that it's going to be spectacular. And yes, you're going to have to wait a while to get the abundance from it, but it does come. And that was a big awakening for me when I looked back at the reunions and took a look at the people that were the popular ones and thought, my.
Yeah. I always remarked at the pretty girls that were married 3 times when I met them. It's like, whoa. Did I really want to be 1, 2, or 3, or just on the outside looking in? No.
Yeah.
Now, not to poke fun at these people, but there are people that can handle that, and then people that think that that's all there is, and there are some very wonderful people that happen to be good looking. Don't get me wrong, but
oh sure,
yeah, but I think to learn from all of the obstacles in life, and not to be and not to complain all the time that what's coming your way is too hard, and why is my life difficult? Why haven't I been dealt this difficult hand in life? And why aren't things easy? I mean, I spent those years thinking, why, wasn't I born into a more fortunate situation? And why didn't I get all the breaks? And it's like, you dummy, you were here to learn, and it's like, be thankful of all the obstacles along your path, because those obstacles are going to train you how to get around obstacles. And then you will become a champion of those obstacles.
But I think a lot of it comes from understanding yourself and getting to know yourself. And I mean, there are many times that I've, had conversations with myself, and it was like, self, do you know what you're doing? No. Well, have a good time,
Well, most people don't even really like themselves, because I think the true self inside them, they're, sees the ego on the outside and is like repulsed, and it's like, well, you know when someone's looking at you through the window and is repulsed, and you don't feel good about yourself. So I think that this kind of inner loathing just weighs people down, and it is so important. If you're going to learn to love other people and accept other people and help other people, you have to learn to love and accept yourself first.
You do, and that's a big one.
I'm still working on it. Still working.
Well, you're still here, so you got plenty of time.
I'm still here. As long as you're here, you're still in the game.
Yeah.
And then you're in another game. Yeah.
No, that's an absolutely important thing for people to hear and understand. That so many people say, "Well, I like me," and it's. Somebody asked me once, if you could change anything in your past, what would you change? And I wouldn't change a thing, because I really like who I am now. So if it took all of the garbage that I went through, then that's what I needed to get to where I am. And I'm still working on me, but I'm very happy with, what I've got now. I certainly have a lot of refining and polishing to do, but it's sort of like I don't regret anything.
Well, I find that I'm filled with regret. But, honestly, when I look right in the mirror, I have to say I probably wouldn't change anything, because these are the steps that took me here, and the person I am now is based on the person who was there, and all those experiences, while painful, and dark at moments, very dark at moments. Actually, we're learning experiences, and I should be thankful for every learning experience. I mean, learning is painful. Growth is painful. I mean, people don't always remember that growth is painful. It's just like when people get sick. They always want someone who's going to give them a pill or give them some magical surgery that's going to make them better without feeling any more pain. And it's like, growth is painful, and change is painful, and life is painful. And it's like, but you don't dwell on the pain, It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, I think that everyone's looking for quick fixes. They're not willing to put in the time. And like, learning is painful.
Yeah, well, some of it is. I have to admit, doing the radio show, I read at least a book a week. And while that is sometimes laborious, I have learned from every book I have read. And so I have grown from it. So painful. Yeah, sometimes it is painful. There's no doubt about it. When I make a choice or something like that isn't appropriate for me, I sit back and I say, well, let's not do that one again, but I mean, if you look at a plant as it grows, it stretches, and stretching hurts sometimes. I mean, and it's growth is something that if you're not growing, you're not living.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be stagnant.
We have these expressions which we quickly forget when we pass adolescence, but the term is growing pains. There's pain to growing. It actually is when your teeth are coming in. It's painful, and I think this is like a life lesson. It's telling you that along the way, as you grow and change, it's going to be painful, and so people, begin to fear change, and I think a lot of people are very fearful of change today. We seem to be in a time of great change, and a lot of people are very upset by that because it's not comfortable to go through all this change. Well, life isn't all about comfort. It's all about change and adapting.
Yeah. Well, and it's important, I think, for people to realize too that this is an amazing time for all of us, and we all have responsibility to make changes, first in ourselves, then in our lives, and then in the totality of what we're involved in, and taking responsibility for ourselves first, but then understanding that we are creating our reality again by our perception of it. So having a clear view as to what would be good and healthy and wonderful for everybody, and learning how to do a click-in to get to the higher consciousness, and then start to put out energy and create the future that we all want to have. and I think the visualization and creativity comes in here too, but a form of meditation, some form of meditation, is certainly advisable for everyone at this point in time. Yeah.
I wrote the Time books, and then I wrote Messages from Beyond, which was about people who wake up and they hear, they realize that they've experienced something else, or they're hearing things. And then I realized that, people don't understand how our thoughts are out there. I wrote a book called Visual Manifesting. And manifesting, I think, was an attempt to show how we can visualize change and project our thought forms out as intelligent energy. And actually, and there's good examples of that. The Maharishi effect. The Maharishi Yoga got his students to project thoughts of peacefulness, and around the world, that experiment has been replicated, and they found that where groups of people meditate on peace in a community for the community, the crime rate goes down. And Mr. Emoto in Japan with his messages in water and miracles in water, he showed how people could actually physically manifest even crystalline changes in the world around them. And even children could collectively project thoughts of love and healing out there, and with great effect, and manifest change through visualizing and then projecting their thoughts. And all of us can do that. We can visualize a better world, a healthier world, a happier world, a more peaceful world, and actually project that out to manifest these changes as real change. And if we do this collectively, it'll have an impact.
Absolutely. There was a group that did a world. What was it? The chamber was in Woodstock, and they had and it was an organization that meditated on peace the 11th of every month at 11 o'clock, and I was a part of it for a while, and it was just fabulous because you knew that as you were starting your meditation on peace, an hour away, a time zone away, another group was just finishing up, so you picked it up and you created a chain of peace meditation around the world. And it was an amazing thing to be a part of. And I don't know if they still do it, but, this goes back to the 60s and 70s. But it was a phenomenal thing to be a part of. And there was there was a study done on places that had meditation groups that meditated once a week at a certain time constantly. So it was a constant meditation, and hospitals near them had people healing faster during those time frames than at other times. So that you're getting together with a group of people and meditating isn't a benefit just to you or just to the group. It does radiate outwards, and if done consistently and at the same time every week or whatever, that energy does affect the environment around you.
It's really good to do this in groups, and along those lines, I think people can actually program their lucid dreams to do group dreaming and actually experience things collectively. That's a little trickier, but it's like there's power in doing things in groups. There's tremendous power, because you have to remember that you're not just like holding a thought within you. You're projecting a thought out as intelligent energy, and that has an impact, and it has a direction.
Well, I think too the important thing for people to realize is this costs nothing. This is something that you can do as a group that costs nothing, that puts energy out there that's powerful, more powerful than most people realize, and it can impact your town, your community, and everyone around you. There is a sense of you get together as a group, and when you have that group energy, it is massively important and incredible. If anyone has ever been to a faith healer where they do the singing and the dancing and everything, you feel that energy, and when they go to do the healing, they're drawing the energy that the singing and the dancing and the praying had generated in that arena, if you will, and whoever is the pastor or whoever is in charge is drawing on that energy to do the healing on the people that you see going down and stuff like that.
That's it.
It's amazing. So, and I'm not saying get together and well, no, you might want to, but it does send energy of a very positive nature out to the whole environment.
So one thing we've learned during the COVID season is that, you don't have to all be in a room together to do this. You could coordinate these things and all do them at the same time and all project your thoughts in the same direction collectively.
Mm-hmm. Or you could do a blog talk show, or you could do a Zoom call or a Skype call. I mean, there's lots of ways you can link your energy. And you don't have to be physically present with the other people. You just need to link your energy. And you just send and in order to do that, you just get yourself into that zone, and then you expand that zone out till you touch other people's zones.
Yep.
And once it's all linked, it's dynamite. So I guess it is dynamite. I think the important thing,
it has tremendous impact and direction. People
it does
often overlook, because I suppose our thoughts, a lot of people think our thoughts are just these empty things inside our head that no one else, has any connection to. But it's not true. We're all of us all the time scattering our thoughts. But the trick is to direct it consciously towards something with a specific goal in mind. Then it has impact.
Well, and one thing I did want to bring up that was in your book that I found fascinating, and I want to get out there, and it may be a piece of trivia, but it really, really, I sat up straight and said, you got to be kidding me. Albert Einstein read Helena Blavatsky and had notes all throughout her book. I think it was Isis Unveiled.
No, it was actually the Secret Doctrine. And, and if you read Einstein, like I've read his essays, you kind of understand how his theories on special relativity and general relativity, and then you read Blavatsky's description of how the cosmos works, involution, consciousness, light coming down to the earth, and all of that. You can see that they I'm not going to say that one influenced the other, but they were thinking in similar ways,
Oh yeah.
And I think I think Tesla too. He was down carving in the dirt, and he looked up at the light and he said, I get it, or something like that. I forget his exact words, but it's like, it's the light. It's the light. Yeah. It is the light that is the source of all, and is the all of us, that is the oneness of all. It is the true source of all consciousness and the power that drives consciousness everywhere.
Yeah. And it's free. I think, today we're all counting our pennies for sure, but this is free. Yeah. Getting into meditation, getting into journaling, getting into working on changing humanity and the environment and everything. It's all free. You don't have to pay anything for this. You just have to become a part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm so kind of, in a sense, I don't want to get on a soapbox here, Barbara, but I think of all these people that spend so much money going to classes and getting certified and going to so-called mystery schools and getting certificates. And it's like, oh my gosh, people, all the answers are inside you. Open up. Open it up.
Yeah.
Go inside. Yeah.
I mean, the reality is, we are our own best teacher. And and going to that source as opposed to somebody else's teacher is interesting, but it won't teach you anything about your journey. So you have to step inside and confront your own teacher and say, okay, where do we go from here? And I promise you get an answer. And sometimes you sit back and say, you got to be kidding me. And yet, that's how things do evolve and change and grow. Give me a break.
Yeah.
But
I remember reading one of Satchidananda's first books, and it's kind of his autobiography of where he was working with his guru, and he came to a point where he no longer could work with this guru because he saw all his failings. He walked up to the man and he handed everything back to him that he'd given him, and he said, I thank you, teacher, but I think you've taught me all you can, and he left. I thought, whoa, yeah.
Yeah, good place to be, a secure place to be. And then realize that you do, it's the teacher becomes the student and the student becomes the teacher, and you flip back and forth in your life. At some points you're the teacher, at some points you're the student, at some points your students are teaching you and you're embarrassed to be charging. And so, it's an amazing dance that you go through. And there are so many ways that you can enhance that process. You could use solfeggio music that will put your brain into a higher frequency that will enable you to get into these places you need to get into. There's drumming. There's so many different ways of getting into that zone. And once you've found the way to get there, then magic is yours. And, can we change the world? Yep, one person at a time.
And I think there are a number of people we come into this incarnation, into this world, already knowing they're like our soul family. They're like soul companions that travel with us They're kind of like on the same. Well, I don't know if they're on the same path, but they're kind of on the same journey as we are. They're part of our soul family, and we'll always be running into these same people over and over again. They might be our father, or our daughter, our friend, and you'll know them when you see them, because it'll be that deja vu moment, like, haven't I met you before? You seem so familiar, and you could and you could finish each other's sentences, and I've gotten to know a couple of these people, and they're very special because they've been on this journey with you a long time.
True. And the reality is, if all of you were put on a private island someplace, you wouldn't go anyplace. You just hang around and change the world from there. And it's more important for people who have that light body energy to be in places where there aren't others, so that they can do what they're supposed to be doing. And a living example. And you can't be a living example if you're in a crowd. So it's fun to meet these people and say, whew, glad there's somebody else out there. So it really is exciting.
Yeah.
I just noticed our time. I realized it went fast, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. I didn't even finish my coffee. Imagine that. Oh, I did.
Oh.
Okay.
So how can people get a hold of you, get in touch with you, and find your books and materials?
Okay, so this book was Time Shifts, and the newer book is Manifesting, and the other one is Mysterious Messages from Beyond. And they're all listed on Barnes & Noble online. They're at Amazon.com. If you go to Amazon.com under the author page, I have a running list of everywhere I've been and everywhere I've like this wonderful show, Nightlight, and it'll tell you how to listen to it, and people can see where I talk, see where I'm going to speak next and where I spoke last. And this fall I got a couple of really interesting things coming out. There'll be actually scrolls. We're starting a new thing. It's Schiffer Books called Ancient Wisdom Series. And what we're doing is we're taking information of old metaphysical, esoteric information and bringing it all the way up to where we are now in a summary form. And then we're putting it in a scroll, and we're going to put it in a tube, a plastic tube that can be buried, because I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the world goes through a lot of cycles, and I don't want to sound doom and gloom on people, but if it has to be buried in the ground, I would like to think it would be in a plastic tube that'll last a couple thousand years. But we have one coming out this fall called Past Lives, and there's one coming out this fall called Lucid Dreams. And then we'll have a couple in the spring coming out called Magical Systems, and another one come out in the spring called Esoteric Healing. And
wow.
And this is the first. We're going to do 4 more. We're going to do 4 every year. So we're going to keep doing 4 and then 4 and then 4. And I hope I can at least get a dozen. And I told him, I said, after I do a dozen, I said, if I run out of gas, you get someone else to keep doing it, because I think that we've got to summarize this information where we are, kind of like put a bookmark into where we are and where we got at this point in our civilization, because civilizations have come and gone, and I think we need to put a bookmark where we are.
I think you're right too. So I want to thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. And
thank you, Barbara.
We're gonna have to do it again.
That's great. I'd love to.
Okie dokie.
Take care.
And you too now. And I want to thank everybody for listening. We will be back here next Monday. Do check this book out. It's really a spectacular book, and it's called Time Shifts, Experiences of Slipping into the Past and Future, and well worth reading with good exercises in it. And I want everybody to stay healthy and tune in next week. We will be here, and I hope you will be too. Good night now.